Good morning and welcome to the Business Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for finding time to be part of the program this morning. My name is Lavisa Chulufia. Do remember that we're live on your top study quarters on channel 95 and also streaming live on our Facebook page. It is Millennium TV Zambia. This morning on the Business Day, of course, we take a look at stories making headlines in the business world. And of course, we also get to speak to a guest. This was our guest on Friday. We've brought him back because obviously there are a few things that we want to discuss. Following up on our discussion from last week, we'll be discussing the impact of hiking fuel pump prices. Mr. Kevin Chisanga will be joining me later on after our business on set. And this morning, for those that are just tuning in, we're coming to the Business Day once again. To remember, we're live on your top city quarters on channel 95 and also live on our Facebook page at Millennium TV Zambia. We take a look at our headlines this morning. Government assures citizens export of maize will not threaten food security. An F&B hosts event to support women-led businesses and SMEs. ABBC calls on African governments to increase investments. Those are some of the stories that we have that are making headlines on the Business Day. And going into details on our business on set, Chief Government Spokesperson Cornelius Mwita has assured citizens that the proposed export of maize of about 500,000 metric tons will not threaten the country's food security. Speaking when he featured on the Southern Potential Program, the minister said the exports will not compromise the food security of the country as there is a surplus of the commodity. Mr. Moto says government also needs to clear out some old maize stockpiles, including those from disaster preparedness and response efforts, which were imported to create sufficient storage for the new stock. And now the Tobacco Board of Zambia, TBZ, has announced that the 2025 tobacco agriculture season commenced on April 1st, 2025. TBZ Corporate Affairs and Communications Manager Lee Hamunji has therefore reminded all stakeholders on the importance of registering tobacco growers and conducting necessary inspections in accordance with the regulatory requirements. He says all tobacco growers are required to complete their registration by October 31st of each year, and sponsors are mandated to register with the TBZ and submit comprehensive lists of their contracted tobacco growers to TBZ for verification by 31st October 2025. Mr. Hamunji says this registration process enables the TBZ to maintain an accurate database of growers, sponsors and their respective production capacities, facilitating effective planning, monitoring and support throughout the agriculture season. And First National Bank, FNB Zambia, recently hosted an event to support women-led businesses and small to medium enterprises, SMEs. FNB Executive Director Chola Kapumpe says this initiative highlights the crucial role women entrepreneurs play in driving economic growth and innovation in Zambia. She says in November of 2024, FNB introduced the Helping Every Woman Rise Her Banking, an initiative that aims to promote inclusive banking solutions and empower women in the financial services sector. Ms. Kapumpe says the bank recognizes the significant gap in the banking services usage between men and men, particularly in rural Zambia, and is taking steps to address these challenges.
First National Bank Zambia, FNB, recently hosted an event to support women-led businesses and small to medium enterprises, SMEs, themed Where Women Lead Businesses Take the Next Step. FNB Executive Director Ms. Chola Kapumpe highlighted the crucial role women entrepreneurs play in driving economic growth and innovation in Zambia.
This really speaks to a powerful truth about women, that women entrepreneurs are not just building businesses, they are building legacies. They are leading with vision, creating opportunities, and driving inclusive economic growth across the country. In November 2022, FNB Zambia launched Her Factory, HER, Helping Every Woman Rise. a bold initiative aimed at fostering inclusive banking solutions, lifestyle solutions, but just incorporating women into the financial services sector. The goal was to empower women to strengthen their financial participation, both individually and through your businesses. I think there was a FinScope, there have been many FinScope studies, but I think where we based this initiative was the revelation of a gap, a significant gap in banking services usage between men and women.
Meanwhile, FNB economist Chileshe Mono noted that the Zambian economy has been influenced by global economic trends, domestic economic factors, and agricultural production. He cited a weaker US dollar, improved mining sector performance, and increased food production due to good rainfall as factors contributing to the strong performance of the Zambian kwacha and lower inflation.
From a currency perspective, just wanted to highlight sort of a one-year view there in terms of what we've been seeing. So a very strong performance that has come through from the kwacha. If you look at it just year on year, considerable movement there. And to sort of understand this, you need to understand what's happening both globally and domestically. So globally, the dollar has weakened generally across major currencies. So if you look at the Ghanaian cedi, for example, it's been the best performing currency over the last year, and this speaks to what we're seeing from a Trump policy perspective. So Trump is trying to improve the fiscal situation in the US, and to improve that, he's using the trade policies to drive that. So in order to encourage exports, you need to have a weaker dollar, which is what he's been pushing for, and we're seeing that a lot of other currencies within the global economy have actually benefited from that perspective. So we're seeing that play out globally, but in addition, we're also seeing very good improvement in the mining sector, which we spoke to from a GDP perspective. That then feeds through into a foreign currency supply. So more FX coming to the economy improves your demand and supply dynamics, and that's why we're seeing this improvement from an FX perspective. Where is it going to go? We're still communicating some weakness between now and December. That just speaks to historical trends where we tend to see demand pick up.
Mwaka Mwansa, reporting for Millennium TV News in Lusaka.
The Africa Biennial Biosciences Communications has called on African governments to increase investment in science, technology, and innovation by leveraging global and regional protocols and initiatives that promote self-reliance and sustainable financing in order to overcome the burden of misinformation and disinformation in science communication. Making a declaration on behalf of 150 delegates after the 6th 2025 Symposium in Lusaka, Delegates Representative Daniel Osofu says the delegates agreed that there is need for African research institutions to mainstream science communication as a core function in research and innovation to ensure messages are clear, culturally relevant, and accessible.
And dialogue platforms to enhance science outreach, foster trust in science, technology, and innovation (STI), and adopt a more robust approach in combating entrenched misinformation within communities. We call on African research institutions to mainstream science communication as a core function in research and innovation to ensure messages are clear, culturally relevant, and accessible. We further call on partners to support annual credible training programs for journalists and communicators in science reporting. We advocate for strengthening of existing multi-stakeholder, multi-sectorial collaboration platforms to break silos, foster regular inter-institutional dialogue, and implement joint communication strategies. Call on stakeholders in science and communicators, including the media, to join the fight against misinformation and commit to sharing accurate and verified information. Working with regional bodies, including the COMESA panel of experts, to uphold peer-reviewed, harmonized scientific practice. We commit to developing a harmonized manual of technologies in One Health and environmental science to improve clarity, policy coherence, and public understanding. We further commit to developing communication toolkits that incorporate storytelling, visuals, and local languages to make science relatable. We call on African governments to increase investments in STI by leveraging the Kampala Declaration and other regional and global protocols and initiatives that promote self-reliance.
And speaking at the same event, International Service for the Acquisition of Agri-Biotech Applications Africa Center Director Margaret Karembu says Africa's progress in climate-smart agriculture is at risk if the spread of misinformation and disinformation remains unchecked.
BBC 2025 and our guests and our hosts from Zambia to just give a very quick point of reflection, so some points for reflection as we get to our place. So over the last 3 days, we have charted meaningful pathways to address one of the greatest challenges as we have had of our time, the persistent spread of misinformation and disinformation in science. Collectively, your wisdom, guys, your wisdom and your commitment have made this symposium a success. As I was listening to the community, I was wondering, wow, did we do all that? So this year again holds a very special place in our history in ISA AfriCenter because it marks 10 years since we initiated this ABBC platform. We started in 2025 when we held it in Kenya, then 2015, oh my, thank you. Of course, you'll get a memo when you get to the office. The boss is always right. Read the rules, Juliana. So we started in 2015 when we held it in Nairobi, Kenya. Then in 2017, we were hosted by our very able Dr. Barbara Zawede here in Uganda, and we had it in Entebbe. In 2019, we came down south to Pretoria, and I know Biosafety South Africa are here. Oh yes, Biosafety South Africa hosted us in Pretoria. Then 2021, you know what happened in 2020? We had the COVID, but not even COVID, not even that virus could stop ABBC training. And we held it as a hybrid where we had 6 different countries, people seated, and we had a connection to the international world. And believe you me, we had over 50.
Meanwhile, Green Economy and Environment Permanent Secretary Dr. Dauti Chibamba says the deliberations of ABBC 2025 have been so valuable by examining how misinformation undermines evidence-based policy and weakens public trust.
ABBC has become a premier platform for convening stakeholders to chart Africa's future through trust in science, open dialogue, and the promotion of innovative solutions. This year's symposium has once again affirmed this relevance by confronting a critical challenge: misinformation and disinformation that continues to undermine Africa's adoption of the biosciences and, by extension, the achievement of One Health and sustainable food systems. Again, when we had a briefing there, I did explain to the leaders there that here in Zambia, misinformation and disinformation is a big problem around this topic. And this is where we are appealing to yourselves. How do we get to academia so that we begin to dismantle this problem. Remember, this is the elephant in the room that is blocking us to getting to sufficiency in food security. Unless we conquer disinformation and misinformation around this topic, we will always be vulnerable to food insecurity.
Right, and that is all that we had for you on our Business on Set this morning. We take a short break. When we come back, we have Mr. Kelvin Chisanga, renowned economist, joining me on set as we discuss the impact of hiking fuel pump prices. Stay tuned.
Got a business, a salon, shop, or online hustle? Don't let it stay in the shadows. At an affordable price a day, your business can shine across Zambia. Book your advert space now. Call the marketing team on 0978 335770 and secure your spot today. MTVZ Biz, where your business meets opportunities. Millennium TV, we mean business.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying tuned into the Business Day. For those that are just joining us, you're welcome to the Business Day. We're live on your top study quarters on Channel 95, and on our Facebook page, do find us on Millennium TV Zambia. Mr. Kelvin Chisanga, renowned economist, is joining me this morning on Business Day to discuss the impact of hiking fuel pump prices. Mr. Chisanga, you're welcome to the Business Day. Good morning, and how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing as well?
I'm all right.
Good morning, dear viewers.
You're welcome you're welcome back to the Business Day.
Yeah, it's like this is my second home after my actual home.
But of course, anyways, to kick off our discussion this morning, for those that might not be aware, yesterday the Energy Regulation Board adjusted upwards the fuel pump prices, with now petrol going at 29 kwacha 18 ngwe from 28 kwacha, while diesel will be at 25 kwacha 2 ngwe from 23 kwacha 13 ngwe. That is what we're going to be discussing. Last week, if you followed through with our conversation, Mr. Tsanga was joining me on the Business Day last week, and we're talking about some of the policies that government has put in place that have ensured the stability of Zambia's economy. And today, that is what we'll be discussing, of course, especially that the ERB has adjusted upwards the fuel pump prices. Maybe Mr. Tsanga, as an economist, in his capacity as economist, is just going to be telling us what this actually entails, especially following up on our discussion last week. Mr. Tsanga, to kick off our discussion, we're discussing the upward adjustment of fuel pump prices as announced by ERB yesterday, and what this actually means. I know you sent me something, which is your analysis, but maybe to just hear it from you.
Okay, so the beginning point that the price growth that has been triggered in petrochemical products, diesel and petrol itself, will have a very strong telling effect on the economy. The effect will be cascading across the broader economy, meaning most of the essential goods will have the pass-through effect. The same margin that has actually been triggered in terms of upward, it will also be cascaded into most of the items that we basically procure at home. And it will also be the same with the businesses out there, meaning the scale of growth that we see with the fuel, it will also be the same with the low materials, and also the pass-through effect also will be able to be aggressive, meaning there won't be any disposable income at household level. The fuel contentment measure, which have actually been taking place for the past 3 months now, which accumulated to 18%, we have now some bit of erosion, meaning even when you look at the inflation context, we are trending inflation toward the policy corridor. With what is happening right now, it may be unlikely that we can sustain inflation at the level that it is moving, especially with the downward trend which we are basically recording. So meaning what we can see in the upward inflation readings might be able to go a bit up, owing to the fact that fuel has also been a strong complementing factor to leading to what we have actually been able to see in terms of positive achievement. So what I should be able to say in essence is that the increase of fuel price will have a escalating effect, which will be now able to destabilize a number of cost structure across the global patterns. If anything, what will be able to happen now is that with the Zambian context, we have an hike which will be able to filter through on the cost of doing business. At some point, we can also make reversal on the good elements that we have recorded so far, especially with the microeconomic gains.
Let us talk about some of the leading factors at play here when it comes to adjusting fuel pump prices upwards.
Okay, so the key primary structural element that plays out, one, the kwacha performance against the US dollar, or rather the dollar performance against kwacha, and also the aspect to do with the price on the market. But with the case now, it's quite different because what we are seeing is that the fuel on the global market is quite muted and very stable in terms of supply. Though we have some supply growth spotlight, taking place from there, and also we've got soft demand for it. The biggest factor that has played out this, it's the geopolitical tension that is happening in the eastern part of Europe and also some other parts around there where the canal has actually been affected with some tensions. The police uncertainty also across the globe and many other aspects. And what is really happening right now is that fuel in the international market, the price has been sustained relatively low, but because of the cost of insurance as well as logistics, that is where now we are having a bit of transmission in terms of cost growth. And this has also now given to the shape of the current situation. And in the case of the Zambian situation, last month's performance in terms of dollar interplay and kwacha has given a depreciation level of about 2.5%. So that combination, the two aspects here is that the 2.5% reduction in kwacha strength, as well as the premium that we're able to see on the fuel, which has at some attractive, additional cost, is what actually has given shape to what we are able to see. So, in short, what I should be able to say is that the fuel on the international market has sustained the price very low, but because we are not channeling the fuel through the normal transport routes and logistics in terms of corridor trade, we are now basically finding some alternative routes for us to have the fuel from where it is being sourced, meaning the cost of insurance has gone up, securing that in terms of risk premiums, and also the aspect to do with the longer routes that we're taking. So that combined together is what now complementing to the case in the Zambian case as we speak right now.
Maybe just to understand what you're trying to explain, we know that the government has been working to diversify fuel imports, leveraging the African Continental Free Trade framework to avoid tariffs and reduce costs. Maybe kindly explain to us what this really entails.
Okay, so what is happening that the energy policy framework have actually been given a very well consultative process where there is a wider stakeholders coming on board. We are looking at unlocking fuel even through Namibia and also through, of course, we have maintained two routes here, Tanzania routes as well as Mozambique. So we are trying now to explore even through Angola as well. So those are medium-term projects which should be able to give birth maybe in the near future. As we see right now, there has been a good moderation in terms of energy policies to see that we basically trigger some good element. And that's the one reason why maybe as we go, we will cover issues to do with open access, which is actually speaking right into the energy policy structure that is taking place from there. So in essence, the wider spectrum of consultation and engagement is what leading to all these factors. And what we see basically working out is that we want also to increase the energy balance sheet so that we can have a wider basket to interplay from there.
Mr. Sanga, we know that there's been, the current government has received a lot of backlash when it comes to reviewing fuel prices monthly. And I think this has also contributed to, having Zambia's businesses not actually being stable because they have to plan every other month. Last month, we know the prices of fuel kept going down, and this month now we've seen an increase in fuel pump prices. What exactly does this mean for even small businesses and just the day-to-day operations of businesses in the country?
Okay, before I come to the business impact, maybe just to give you a share, I will take it back to 2021. We had a budget which was running, I think, up to about 119 billion Zambian kwacha as an aggregate number. Then we went beyond 125, 125 somewhere there. We had an overlap of about 25% on public goods. And that time we were basically looking forward to procure fuel through the central government. But because the central government does not see a well-balanced target in terms of fuel subsidy, that's the reason why we came up to this point where we have now left the fuel in the hands of private sector, because they've got capacity, they have got also scalable means that they should be able to work out. Government was learning over expenditure kind of situation, which also started breeding now the aspect of failing to make obligation on debts, destruction process, and all of those factors. So in essence, what I should be able to put across is that yes, when it comes to the impact on the business or on the business side, we have a massive element that are basically manifesting from there. With the beginning point that there is a cost factor that is passing through, to the final end. As I mentioned, the business environment will not be able to be sufficient if the cost of energy is kept upward, because we basically want to create that positive purchasing power, especially with the consumer, also matching with production scales. So the business get to suffer if there is a bit of increment that is taking place, especially with the low material, which is quite critical, because fuel is a basal factor that plays around production and also goes to the consumption side. When transporting, definitely you find that sectors like agri-business, production, manufacturing, they are the best elements that to be able to be faced with a challenge. They have immediate effect when there is an increment. So what basically plays out is that the production cycle gets to be having some spillover effect. So that is what basically will play out from that basis. And what we see in essence also is that the cost of doing business, and it also affects the capital stock, because once we start having fuel going upward, we are also breeding inflation now. As we breed inflation, the central bank comes now to hike the policy. Once they hike the policy, it means they are tightening the financial capacity, meaning the financial mechanism won't be able to work to expand production. At the end of it all now, we have job losses, we have less competitive situation, we have also less investors' confidence as well from there. So it has got a spillover effect, which will be quite compounding.
Just the month of August, there were reports about shortages of diesel in the country, and coming to the end of August, when we were experiencing, I think even up until last week, there were reports that there was a shortage of diesel in the country, and now the ERB announces an increase in diesel. Maybe make it make sense for us. If we're having a shortage of diesel in the country, and at the end of the month there is an increase in diesel prices, how does that work?
Okay, I'll be very honest with you. Standing on a patriotic Zambian, I think this has also been a concern, even just from an economic perspective or even expert commentary point of view. I think within the fuel subsector, we still have some cartels which are very active. And obviously, some people act against when they know that the prices are going low. The cartels that are there are also strong to a point whereby I think we need to work some models. Maybe the increment also of about 80% in diesel testify and demonstrate to say that perhaps some invisible hands have actually worked out into this so that they can have sufficient and stable supply. That is just also from the policy and governance point of view. Again, the issue is that I think it also requires to see how best we can find alternative source of energy when it comes to this. And perhaps also we should be able to see how best we can work out making business review to make sure that the fuel cost center becomes more manageable compared to what we have also seen where we have wasteful expenditure. So fuel is a very important resource that need to be looked into, and also find formidable way in terms of trying to make sure that we have a steady supply with the huge storage capacity, and also ensure that we have a predictable environment. Otherwise, sometimes we tend to have fuel element as the serious misnomer to the economic structure.
But don't you think maybe prices of diesel should have been maintained at 23 kwacha 13 ingwe instead of increasing, especially after having shortages of diesel in the country?
Okay, maybe I may surprise or shock you in this. Zambia uses more of diesel. It lands on diesel. It produces on diesel. It transports on diesel. Right. Diesel occupies a larger percentage. If anything, if you were to look at the composition, we're talking about slightly over 65%. What we see on the petrochemical sort of composition, diesel is what actually basically lands the most of the industrials that we're able to see in terms of trying to work with the industrial growth itself. In terms of petrol basically is just playing out with the vehicles, but diesel catches across. It goes into the mining, it goes into agriculture, it goes everywhere. So diesel occupies a larger space. If anything, the impact is going to be felt on production almost immediately. On the side of petrol, we've got a small fraction. If you even just look at the composition of usage, we're talking about 1.80 million liters per day for petrol. But for diesel, we are standing at 4.5 million liters per day. Yes.
And talking about, the inflation, we know that I think the recent announcement by Zamstats is that inflation has gone down to about 12.6% from 13% actually. Now with the increase in fuel pump prices, I know you've already spoken to this, but maybe just in detail, what does this mean? When it comes to inflation and all that, and knowing that the kwacha is actually stable, it has been stable for some months now. We've seen the increases in fuel pump prices, and the inflation is going down. With the increase in fuel pump prices, what does this mean?
Okay, so the aspect to do with macroeconomic performance, when you look at the key factors like inflation, exchange market, fuel, and the inflation itself, what we have actually been able to see is that for a good month, like starting from May up to July, we had very good equilibrium in terms of performance. They were in a balanced scale. We could not have any sharp changes from there. But of course, the biggest parameter here is that the tax inflows, which were being given in the form of VAT, pay, and many others, sustained the temperature around economic factors. And what we have seen that the production growth also was actually something that was speaking very well in terms of even just looking at the agriculture output, which was quite strong. And of course, it's still strong up to this moment. So what we have seen happening in the last month is because of the dollar change and kwacha, it has actually been able to have that shake-up, which is basically speaking to 2.5% of loss on the kwacha side. So now, speaking into the aspect of, oil, what we have seen so far happening is that when we have the triggering point of growth like this, it disturbs the inflation movement pattern. Inflation has been feeding through even fuel as well, and inflation does not come just from one point. It has a fuel feeder, it has got a fuel, food part, it has got even governance part as well. Governance is in two ways. The central and monetary government also contribute to what we are able to see. So what we're going to see is a fuel component now peaking negatively on the inflation side, because the current situation where the cost structure have actually been maintained for some time, with the aspect of stable and sustained credit basket, we should be able to see now that fuel now will be able to start breeding inflation from there. So that is what is actually going to imply into this.
Last time you were here, you spoke about how the dollar has been weak on the market, and I think this is what has helped from what you say, this is what has helped the kwacha stabilize. With the increase of fuel pump prices, does this mean that maybe now the dollar has gained some strength on the market? Maybe this is why we see an increase in fuel pump prices.
Not really. Maybe just to clarify around the kwacha's performance, performance in that way. The output and the outlet performance of the kwacha has not just maintained or be with an aspect of dollar being lower on the global market. Yes, that dollar issue of being weak in the global market was also one of the complementary factor which led to the growth or the performance that we saw in kwacha, which was actually positively performing from there. But again, the issue that dollar is still sustaining, not necessarily moving with the aggressiveness that we should be able to see. It's still coming up with there. The issue is that we have a momentum in which we're going to uplift the dollar demand in the local market, because what we have is that we are going to start now driving a few goods into the country like physical products and many other, including even oil itself, will be part of the complementary part that will be able to lead kwacha's performance in that. So now, coming back to the issue of what has led to the fuel coming to this conclusion or closure, it's because of the premium that we are able to see. As I mentioned, insurance costs as well as logistics factors are the ones that are leading the pack of what we have seen complementing to the growth of fuel cost. And those, of course, coupled with the kwacha's performance. So kwacha's performance in last month has been a bit moderate, average on its performance, but it has also recorded about 2.5% depreciation level. So with that, and in combination with now the aspect of premium on the oil products, is what has led to this. Maybe also the issue that we are trying to avoid to have a situation where the market does not have any commodities on the market. It's basically just also creating that stability of supply and the deep sense of security of supply as well. Otherwise, it will be difficult for us to go with the sustaining the cost when there are costs also that are being factored as additional pressure to the commodity itself.
I wanted to talk to the issues of policy that you spoke about last week in our discussion, Mr. Tsanga. You talked about the stability that we're now able to see in the economy. This is because of the policies that the current government has put in place. Does this mean that, obviously there's policy changes when we see increases in fuel pump prices, and you've spoken about how this will also affect inflation and food on the market, food prices on the market, just transportation. I think in your statement yesterday, you also spoke about how this will also affect transport costs. Households will face higher food and essential commodity prices due to increased food distribution costs. And also you spoke about business, especially in the agriculture, transport and production and the manufacturing, will encounter high operation expenses. Does this also speak to policy formulation and implementation under the current government?
Yes, it does, because you see, when an inflation aspect and context is disturbed, it's already a policy matter, because you see, inflation itself, it's a policy measuring tape, or rather measuring line. If you see inflation is going the way it is, standing at positive 12.6, it implies that the people that are mandated to do some work, they are performing. That is a measuring tape we are able to use to see that they are going toward our targeted band, which is 6 to 8%. So if there is a destabilization in the fuel price and the implementation of certain elements that are inclined to issues of energy, then that becomes a total departure of what we are trying to see. What can even happen then is that when there is an high inflation, if your budget has been tagged to run with maybe an expense column of about 12 billion, but because of inflation moving away, taking you to 14 billion, that is already a policy departure in itself, meaning what will be able to happen there is that the resource will be allocated will be sourced, or there will be an amendment that will be taking place to accommodate that resource. So this is what actually happens from there. So the issue of inflation is not just an issue of a number, it's an issue linked to policy framework. And even when we have differentials that are taking place, like in the case of inflation, going beyond, going away, all these are factors that can actually lead now to some changes that can also take place. Just like even at company level, if fuel is now getting to be increased, your fuel cost centers being maybe like 12,000 kwacha, and now that there has been an increase, then you are required to even adjust accordingly, meaning your fuel cost center will go up to 15,000 kwacha, meaning you have a contentment of 3,000 kwacha as an extra, which comes in from contagions. So what is happening right now is that there will be some shifts that will be happening. Resources will be allocated. There will be a lot of changes that can also take place from maybe even in the personal level. So it's cascade from that point where you start changing according to match the condition that is prevailing, and that is the case that we have as at now.
Let me also have you speak to the open access system that government has implemented. Just maybe explaining to us in detail what open access system is and how it actually works.
Okay, so my starting point can be traced in 2019 when we basically had to formulate a national energy policy. This national energy policy was done by the previous government, trying to also mitigate some of the risk factors that the energy sector faces. We understand that Zambia has been utilizing a number of things. If you look at the aspect to do with the fuel in itself, solid oil, we basically had a very sustained model in which we are basically working out with Indeni and many others. And much to this also, there was a monopolization kind of structure which actually interplayed from there. So the energy policy itself, the reason why I made a reference to this is to make you understand where we're coming from. So the energy policy was not well exploited to look at a lot of factors. There were things that were left hanging in balance. So now with the situation that we face, where we have had the issues of energy crisis and all that, and even now looking at the debt part that we were occupying with regards to petrol, we had almost something close to about $500 million US, which we have still continuously making commitment in terms of repayments. So with that now, it became a bit difficult for us to work out with a lot of models. So now what has happened in the case that we have tried to see which ways can we work out to make sure that we have a sense of security in terms of supply. So we have now made a lot of reforms around energy sector, where we are now speaking of trying to see if we can have private investment capital to interplay strong into this sector, so that as government moved and pulled out from the procurement of fuel in the form of removing subsidies from there, so the private sector has been playing out this part. And that is the reason why now we have reached a point where we want everyone who's got capacity within the private sector to interplay into this sector. And what we have done so far in terms of arrangement, the Tazama pipe oil is now being used by anyone who actually may be able to have the capacity to utilize it, of course, through the facilitation of the fee, and also ensuring that they have also a steady contractual arrangement that is there. So what is happening is that there is a model which is taking place on a 3-month basis or a month basis, where there is a tender or bidding process which is actually taking place. So we normally have a situation where price now is pegged within a certain parameter, like the way we're talking of ELRB, making up from there, and also going a bit further as a regulator, also to do the fuel marking, so that we know that the product that is actually out there is something that is of quality and high standard. So a number of things that have actually interplayed from there in terms of open access. What basically is playing out with the open access that we've got players now trying to bring fuel from different sources. They can actually bring from the routes of Mozambique, Tanzania, but the convergence point would be that ELRB has to do the marking so that we have the authenticity of fuel other than having alterations or alteration, whatever you can call it. But the bottom line is that we need to find a common factor in terms of fuel, so that the fuel that is being used by various motor vehicles and machines are not contaminated in a way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the open access system is actually working?
Well, it has worked well, except there are some spotlight of political interferences in a way, and that is what is actually even making a difficult situation. Perhaps when we started doing this early this year, we saw how it has worked. But of course, you know, there are people that have got interest now where they're saying, I think this is not working out. And that's the reason why we seem to have some artificial shortages of the commodity in a way. But again, the issue is that it just need to see how we can fill up some of those missing gaps and see how best part of this can actually play out. The best way maybe should be government should be a guarantor to some of the projects that need to be done in terms of contractual or forward contracts, so that we can have more stability of supply and more, stability in terms of a commodity being available across.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just to end our conversation and taking you a little bit back to policy formulation and implementation, the stability that we've seen in the economy the past few, maybe 2-3 months, and now it seems like we're going back to the same place where we came from, with fuel prices going high. You've spoken to maybe this will also affect the inflation and probably the performance of the kwacha as well. Will it be safe to conclude that maybe there were artificial factors at play?
Not to that what we should be able to say, but again, it's that we had some positive combination of factors that played out critical elements into this. As I hinted, the stability that we saw in the last 4 or 5 months was mainly complemented from different sources. There was a healthy tax structure, which spoke also with an aspect of dividend payout. There was also an aspect of harvest which took place. Obviously, the effect is still there, being lingered. There are a number of things. But again, the issue is that I think it can also be an aspect of a small portion of political influence in a way. But what we are seeing today is more political influence compared to where we are seeing. And again, the issue is that, we are basically going to a more challenging time. That's one reason why maybe some of us will be even calling to say, in terms of kwacha management, let's look at it more on the reactive side as compared to crisis situation, because obviously this is also something that we see as standing perennial. Kwacha usually faces challenges in September up to December, and this is what we also need to look at in terms of forex market. Then in terms of also other factors also, we can speak to say, I think Zambia needs to sustain more on forex management and the energy resilient models, so that we can have that balance scale. Otherwise, what we see as playing out here is that we can find a very challenging Q4, which will also not be able to attain the targeted band for early next year in terms of inflation. Not only the inflation as well, even when it comes to the policy performance, we may be able to find that it becomes difficult. Maybe also we can refer to what we discussed last week. I mentioned to say everything else is working well, but the energy policies is where there is a problem. I hinted to say there might be an increase in fuel or increase in electricity. Electricity spending, because that one is more inclined to the politics of what we see. And again, also the political economy of the business and investment requires that we need to also safeguard the environment so that we can have some good elements at the end of it all. And back to this also, if you look at even just the extension of the IMF, that also becomes imbalancing, because you see where we are going to see the IMF looking forward to contain our budget issues, and also making sure that we have a debt sustainability model continuously. Then they also, on the side of the political elements, who should be able to see that they want to expand, resources into the public welfare so that they can sustain the votes. So those are issues that we are basically, looking at. So it's an issue where we are in a very challenging and sensitive period when it comes to issues of public resource.
Mr. Sanga, it's been a very, very productive morning on the Business Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, we come to the end of our discussion on the Business Day this morning. Thank you so much to everyone that tuned in. We were discussing the impact of hiking fuel pump prices. And of course, joining me on set was renowned economist, Mr. Kelvin Chisanga. And my name is Lovisa Chilufia. Do stay tuned to Millennium Television. Do enjoy the rest of our programming today.
Got a business, a salon, shop or online hustle? Don't let it stay in the shadows. At an affordable price a day, your business can shine across Zambia. Book your advert space now. Call the marketing team on 0978 335770 and secure your spot today. MTVZ Biz, where your business meets opportunities. Millennium TV, we mean business.